Welcome to Trafficking Truth's MythBuster campaign. I'm Rebecca Bender, and I'm so excited to bring to you today an incredible campaign that we've put together to help you sort through everything you're seeing online. I wanted to take a really quick second before we jump into all of our interviews and just share my heart behind this campaign that we put together. You know, I've been in the field for almost 12 years, and I've worked in all sorts of different lanes and capacities within this movement. And I knew that when we started seeing this flood of information that was coming on the internet, that it was so important to teach people how to sort through everything that's online. Because when we know the tactics on what trafficking looks like for different age groups of kids, then we can actually better protect our children from being exploited. Today, I want to welcome you to myth number 1. Kids are always kidnapped. That's just not true. Kids are actually trafficked by people they know and trust. So I want to welcome today's 3 interview guests. I have brought you from a greater metropolitan Atlanta area, we're not disclosing location, an entire undercover vice unit that's been working human trafficking for over 12 years. I also have on Operation Underground Railroad to talk about the differences between international and domestic, because sometimes what they're putting out can be misconstrued as happening in your community. I'm so excited that they're willing to be here and talk about some of those misconceptions. And then lastly, we're bringing on throughout this entire campaign, resident subject matter expert, internationally recognized Elizabeth Scaife. So let's get started. All right, welcome to our MythBuster campaign. I am so excited to bring you guys our special undercover investigation unit from a law enforcement agency in the metro Atlanta area of Georgia. We are not disclosing exactly locations and names or anything. My friends here will not be removing any of their masks or hats during this, but we really wanted to get you, the viewer and the listener, really good, true information on how trafficking happens, how people are recruited, so that you can keep your loved ones safe and know what to look out for. So, guys, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely.
How many were legitimately kidnapped, and how many were lured by somebody that they thought they knew and trusted? Just, I ballpark it. Obviously, we're not going to like cite you and be like.
I mean, I'd say honestly, I'd say percentage-wise, I'd say up in the mid 90 to high 90s of who were lured and coerced and, you know, fraudulently brought into that lifestyle or promised things that, you know, there was no intention of ever delivering on.
Yeah, I've never worked a case where they were actually kidnapped. I mean, like I said, a lot of times, like Sarge just said, it's mostly going to be the lure of something that attracted them, of course, into it. I mean, me personally, I've never where they was actually kidnapped into that situation.
Yeah, most of the time, it's almost like kidnapping in plain sight. Like they don't realize what it is. He knows, the exploiter knows what it is, and it's just you don't realize it until it's too late, when all of a sudden she can't get out of the life, or even if she needs help. So it doesn't start out as an actual kidnapping, but by the end, I'm sure it feels like being kidnapped.
Yeah, there's no way to leave. You feel very trapped by the end. But I think that initial recruitment it's not as violent in the beginning. I mean, I do think it gets very violent. Obviously, we all know that firsthand. It's almost like when you start saying no, or when you start not wanting to comply, or when someone's wanting to brainwash you to obey a certain set of rules. That's when you see a lot of the violence that begins, at least in my work with people, not just my own lived experience. But we had a case a while back, a girl that we were helping, and she said, well, I just don't know if I'm trafficked. I'm not like you guys. He's never hit me. We knew she had a trafficker who had did time for murder. He did 12 years for murder, got out and started trafficking her. And I was like, well, I think that's because you've never said no. So he's never had to like get really violent yet, but he has other victims he absolutely has gotten violent with. And that was kind of a little bit, and it wasn't like anyone's putting her down. She just wasn't understanding if she even fit in the scenario that was being painted for her by the public. And I think that's why Mythbusters and misperceptions are so important, because it's not always going to be what we see on the movies. And then victims don't self-identify.
Right.
Do you guys have cases where you have girls that have said, like, I'm not a victim of trafficking? How often does that happen?
Oh, that happens all the time. I mean, they'll get them and they'll say, I'm not one of those girls. I'm not. No. But at the same time, I do this all on my own. I don't have a pimp. I do this on my own. Nobody else is involved. But there's always somebody behind the scenes. Somebody's stringing them along somewhere. We see that all the time.
Yeah, they're protecting someone.
I think.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna go back to the kidnapping thing. When you look at this as a business, which is what the trafficker treats it like, I don't think your success rate as a kidnapper is very high. You know what I mean? I think to be a successful business person as a trafficker, it requires that grooming stage, that bringing them in and treating them great and making them feel part of the family and introducing them to the family and building those bonds, even if it's for a short amount of time, showing them a lifestyle that, something they didn't get or didn't grow up with, or something that they're missing, finding out and manipulating. That's what they do. They find out what your weakness is and they exploit it. That's what they do. So whatever it is you're not getting at home, I don't know if you can see me. I'm getting a phone call right now.
It's all good. It'll come back.
Yeah. Whatever it is you're not getting at home, they're going to work on that and figure out how they can at least show you, well, I can provide that for you. And so I think that whole grooming stage is key to what they're trying to establish. So that's why I think that they're just not going to be, not to say that the kidnappings don't happen, but like Dee was talking about, he's never had one, and he's been doing this for longer than most people. So
how long have you guys been working in law enforcement in general? How long have you worked investigations and UC work? Do you mind sharing? Can you share that? How many years you've been doing this?
Go ahead, Dee.
I've been doing it almost like 14 years. I've been doing device work and dealing with human trafficking for about 12 years.
12 years, so, not one kidnapped case. What do you think is the biggest myth you're seeing around right now with trafficking, and what would you say about it?
Some of the myths that we're seeing here is the creepy white van that's driving around the lot, and with real traffic, somebody who's looking to traffic a child or things like that. We appreciate those calls, suspicious vehicles, things like that, because there are many different people out there, criminals out there, and they're looking for different things. But the things that we see in human trafficking here, especially in Atlanta, is we're a growing city here. We're a city that has a lot of culture, a lot of things going on, and that's an easy sell for. I'm just going to talk about how girls are attracted to Atlanta, how any girls and boys may be attracted to come to Atlanta, women too as well. There's a lot of jobs here right now. There is a lot of the young girls that we run into, they may meet these guys who tell them there's a job here in Atlanta, whether it's a regular job or modeling. We've got a large rap community, music going on here with beats and things. A lot of girls that we've recovered before in the past, we've made contact with, or, they've met these guys who've promised them these lifestyles. When they come down here, they'll be working with recording studios or this or that. So that's one of the draws to Atlanta. It's kind of flashy here. They can come down here. Some of the girls we recover, they come from small towns, or they've got something, and we know what a lot of these girls, but there's girls we've recovered here that have nothing to wish for. They've got everything in the world. Their family comes from money. But there's something missing in their life that's brought them here, or for some reason they're here. And then there's the girls that people would expect to be in this lifestyle, which we run into out here as well. There was 2 girls that in a case we recovered last week out of Michigan. There were 2 girls that we took out of a house, 20 and 22 years old. Both of them had small children with them, and they'd only been here a week, and they were promised when they come here, hey, you're going to have a job, you're going to make money. And quickly, they learned quickly after they got here that wasn't going to be what they were going to be doing. Luckily, when we offered them some help, they accepted the help, and we were able to get them out of the situation they were in.
That's really fortunate. That's not that common, right? Usually that trauma bond sets in, and it's hard to convince people to leave.
We were stunned last week when we got 2 girls out of one house to come with us. I mean, you're lucky if they even listen to you sometimes. So we were stunned to get 2 that accepted some help that day.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have heard, obviously my story. I wanted to bring experts on, so it's not just about my story, but it's so fascinating in a weird way to hear all of the same kind of stories, like over and over, 19-year-old single mom from small town being enamored with Vegas lights. And as soon as, by the time we were interacting with law enforcement, I'd been so brainwashed to believe you were the rival gang. It was like middle finger at you. I ain't taking no help from you. And we, the girl I was trafficked with literally said like, F you to the cops that were trying to help. And so I think you bringing up, it's so rare, shock to get someone to say yes. It's so true. It's a real common lure to help single moms.
Right. And well, in that one there, the bond hadn't been established yet between the trafficker and the ladies yet. So we were able to get them in time because, as you know, they're trained that the police are the enemies, that we're not going to help them, that we're going to take their children from them, or we're going to even if they don't have children, we're going to separate them from their family. And that's half the battle is the emotional trauma that she's already been through, and just to try to get her to step outside herself and look at the way we're looking at it and try to trust us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But Daryl, if you want to jump in here and say some of the other myths that we've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, basically the same thing you said. I mean, a lot of people think, like I said, a lot of these victims come from a low income families, but a lot of them are not. They're, like you said, they're well-to-do families, and they get trapped into that kind of, I guess, that love that they're missing at home. And that person out here, I mean, I got a case, like I said, one of the traffickers, the first thing she said, nobody's ever showed this girl love, and we're showing them love, but it's the wrong love, but they're showing them love. And at least that a little bit of tension helps them, makes them feel like, okay, this person wants me. And the myth is, like I said, when we come in as law enforcement officers and we're actually trying to get you a little help, you run into that problem of, I got a trafficker who I know is going to be there for me, or she believes is going to be, or he believes that's going to be there for him. And I just met this law enforcement officer for every bit of 5 minutes, and he's trying to take me away. But typically in law enforcement agencies, and it's, to be real with it, I can't be there 24 hours a day with you after that. So a lot of them look at that issue and go, I know he's going to be here. You're just going to recover me, send me off to a group home, blah, 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 and I'll never see, you again.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times what we try to do is stay in contact with these victims. Let them know that, hey, we're going to try to keep. My goal, like I tell John, everybody explain to them, our goal is not a stat to put somebody in jail. Our goal is to see you 20, 10, 15 years away and later down the road and say, that guy saved my life that day. Mm-hmm. That guy reached out and helped me that day. He just didn't let it go. I mean, as of today, we still talk to some of the victims. When John gets letters, we see them, they come back and thank you. That's our appreciation from actually doing this. Mm-hmm. So it's just a bigger issue than, I guess, what society is actually seeing. It's not the overseas or whatever, but there's brothels, there's everything that we deal with. So it's not only just secluded to the low income family, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I don't think we realized 10 years ago where everyone having access to the internet could lead so quickly. And even if you're smart with your even if you're a parent, you're thinking, well, I put filters on my phones, on my kids' phones, and I've taught them. Their friends have phones that don't have filters. Kids are showing things to each other in locker rooms. They're getting stuff sent to them on DMs, even in Kids Messenger. My daughter the other day, and I got filters on stuff. She was like, oh yeah, Mom, my cousin sent me a TikTok video. And I was like, let me see that TikTok video. What in the world would you? Thankfully it was like a cat, but you just never know.
And we're all parents here. So, I mean, we can all testify to what you just said. And TikTok videos.
And it's crazy part about it is even on mainstream TV now they're saying the F word, they're cursing, they're showing the kissing and the sex. Condom commercials is thrown in these kids' faces every day, and they're seeing this. So it's not more, I guess, what you want to call prohibited or whatever. Is like now it's mainstream. From, like I said, it's okay. Like TikTok, every video for you to get likes, you have to wear a G-string bikini. I mean, everything like that. So when these young kids are seeing this, this is what they imitate. This is what they need to do to get these hearts and likes and stuff like that. And that's just society right now.
Yeah.
The less you wear, the more people like you, you know, so it's just crazy the way this world is.
We had a researcher that we were talking to out of Colorado talked about just what an interesting time it is for sociologists that are like watching how people are responding to different amount of likes or a different amount of comments or followers. And it's just such an interesting time. As both parents and people who've been working in this industry for a very long time to fight it, maybe you can kind of like give us, this is a twofold question. When we're talking about if it's not kidnapping and we know that people are luring their victims, grooming, recruiting, where are some places they're finding them? We did mention online. We talked about, text messaging and different social media apps. But where are some other like recruiting zones? And does it vary per age? So like if you're seeing the exploitation of young children, 5 to 11 versus, preteen versus teen versus college age up to, 24. You just talked about finding a 21 and 22-year-old victim. Are there different recruitment tactics based on age? And if so, can you talk to that and to the parents, really?
I mean, I would definitely say yes. What I would say is the traffickers are predators, and predators are going to hunt where their prey is. So, they're going to be looking for that, teenager around a large shopping facility or a mall. You know what I mean? The tactics will change. I think that's why you're going to have probably more access to a younger child through, a gaming system or, through online. But yeah, they're going to hunt where they feel like they can find their prey. So anywhere that you feel like, and sometimes, we've all heard stories about, casing, bus stops and stuff like that, looking for, a younger looking person getting off a bus, looking around like you can tell they're out of their element. They're not where they're supposed to be. So looking at those areas where you would find people like that, that's where they're going to be.
And I think also, I mean, not to say that it's everybody, but if you bring in the drug element of it, now, back when I grew up, and not to disclose my age, but back when I grew up, marijuana was the little thing. If you did marijuana, it was cool, whatever. But now if you're not on pills, cocaine, everything that you can, every type of drugs is crazy. So some of these girls and guys are addicted to that. These guys know where that party's at. And a lot of them, our traffickers do push that drug element as well. So if I can keep you on pills and high and working, and I know that's the coercion part of it, I can recruit you that way. Or I bring in this next girl who I know can go out and talk, and she's got friends. They're using other girls to recruit, to bring it in, because it sounds better coming from a female than it does him. And once he gets that hook into you, then it's hard for you to leave, because a lot of the females are bond. I don't want to leave her there. She don't want to leave her, so they stay.
You guys, to me, are always just doing such great work, and I really, really appreciate all of you. So
thank you
for joining
us. Thank you for everything. Hey, thank you for everything you do as well.
Today's interview, we have with us two incredible men from Operation Underground Railroad. John Lyons, the Chief of Operations, and Carlos Rodriguez, Domestic Coordinator. Thank you guys for joining me.
Great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I really wanted you guys to join us today because Operation Underground Railroad has such a reach in terms of you get in front of people a lot. And I know that you all have stories of being former law enforcement. And I felt like your voice was really important in this space to talk about some mythbusters surrounding what trafficking really looks like in our communities and how people can protect their kids, protect their loved ones, be smart, be safe. Obviously, you guys have worked ops and you see children and adults in situations that aren't like the movies. And so if you could share with us a little bit, specifically with Operation Underground Railroad, adults, children, TV scenarios of rescues, like it all sounds really great. Tell us what the reality is when you're working in this space and who you focus on, and what it looks like domestically.
Well, that's important that you mentioned domestic, because when I came on board with Tim, I said, the CEO and founder, who coincidentally was one of my agents, I supervised his supervisor when he was at Homeland Security. And so when he called me up and said, will you join us at OUR? I said, Tim, I'll join you, but we need not step over the children here in the United States to seek out children in other third world countries. That's a disservice to what's happening here, because that completely goes against my grain of we've got to help children everywhere, and there are children that are being trafficked. And Carlos explained very well that online exploitation is a form of trafficking. Yeah. So regardless of what the form of trafficking is, whether it's a child being groomed online or using the online forum to actually sell and buy children, or if there are brothels or massage parlors that use underage girls here, and we need to be able to address that everywhere, and we need to address it appropriately. We did not try and show that we are doing more than we actually are authorized to do. That was very important to me, is to make sure people understood that we were going to empower those people that are best positioned to actually take immediate action against this type of crime. Let me talk a little bit about the rescue, because I had some things I wanted to add also. There is no true rescue without recovery. I mean, you can go in and take somebody out of harm's way, and that's what a rescue is. But out of harm's way, that's just the first little maybe inch of a 10-mile run. That person's out of harm's way. We've got them away from their traffickers. We've saved them from the immediate person or individual or the organization that was exploiting them. Now, what do we need to do to assess the needs of this individual? And if we don't find and employ and empower and resource those people that have been trained, that understand the dynamics, people like you that have lived through that horror, that we consult with you as an expert, a survivor who understands the mindset and why it is, somebody that you think from a distance, that's a person. That was a rational choice. You could have run at any time. They don't understand that. People onlooking do not get that. So we need to understand that we need to surround ourselves at OUR with those professionals in every step of the way, whether it's psychological, mental health, or vocational training, or helping that broken mind, body, and spirit in so many different ways. That's just part of what we do, is help. And I'll get back to what goes into an operation. But I just want you to know that OUR is very victim-centric. That is what we want to make sure people understand. The people that are watching us from afar saying, what is it that OUR does? Are they just a bunch of grandstanders that look? The media makes it look like that. I'm not a real fan of some of the things that we've had out there. I really am not. But,
well, I think most people hear rescue and they're not envisioning that means busting a buyer. A rescue to the general viewer means you're showing up at 5 a.m. in SWAT gear, busting down the door with the little black whatever they are. I know you know the proper words. I don't. And grabbing this sex ring of 5 children in the dungeon and running out. And that's not at all actually what it looks like domestically, nor is that, and maybe that's something you may have seen internationally at some point in your career, but I just feel like they hear rescue and this whole other vision comes into people's minds.
Let me give you some anecdotes. Here in the United States, here's what we do. And having been a law enforcement officer, you always assume everybody's doing things similarly to what you're doing, or that you've received training and you want the power under your supervision. Oh, those guys that you have to assign casework to, you want to make sure that they're well equipped to do what they need to do. So as the cases come across our desk, we assign them. I want that guy to have the skill set to be able to go effectively investigate a case, present it to a prosecutor, and that case play itself out well in a court.
Right.
Well, I will tell you, and as I've been with OUR and I sit down with police chiefs, sheriffs, commanders, lieutenants, those who oversee child crimes units, there is a great disparity in the skill set and understanding of what human trafficking is, what child trafficking is, and how to most effectively combat that, so that those who fend children they get the justice they deserve, or the penalties that should come from such a terrible crime, and that children are taken care of that we identify along the way. The recovery, like Carlos says, is identifying that child and putting them on a path to recovery and making sure that every step of that, the ultimate goal is for these children to self-actualize. We want that child to experience every bit of joy that you and I deserve, every bit of joy that they deserve, every bit of opportunity that everybody here in the United States and the world deserves.
I would love, right before we jumped on, we were talking about this pendulum swinging in like marketing and media, specifically media, and just the general public, where 10 years ago we were fighting for the news to stop using terms like teen hooker. If the Epstein case would have came out 10 years ago, they would have labeled all those girls as teen hookers and not seen and heard the victim's voice. And today it feels like, and so I'm so glad that we've made so much progress in that lane. There's still some work to be done with some things, but we've made a lot of progress. Now I feel like the pendulum is starting to swing this other way, where we're seeing all of these almost what we would call urban myths, right? It's like if you flash your lights at someone at night, they're going to turn around and get you. Or if there's peanut butter on your windshield, it might be a trafficker nearby that's going to kidnap your babies while you're wiping it off. I mean, we're seeing this pendulum swing to talk about child pedophile rings. And I think that evokes this real different vision for parents than what we're really seeing. And so I'd love to hear from you guys about that before we close.
Well, I from my experience, I mean, I've never really encountered anything like that in my entire law enforcement career. Children and people are more at risk of being trafficked from their day-to-day activities than from shopping on some website. I just haven't seen any validity in that. As with the people that I've investigated, the people who are higher tier, they utilize more things like the dark web and things like that, where it's just not out there in plain view, right under your nose, which I know that seems like a sensationalized way to think of it and maybe would make for a great movie, but that's just not what I've seen. From my experience, it's going to be, if your kid's in online gaming and he meets some strangers on Discord and they develop a relationship, then they want to go do a meet, and then they start to talk about things, or someone slides into your DMs on TikTok or Instagram. It's going to be something like that. Someone going to school and they meet someone who they feel meets their needs, or say they can meet their needs. Those are the things that I've seen.
I can close.
No, I guess the only thing I'd have to say is, thank you for what you are doing, and for giving us this opportunity to share what we are about. Unfortunately, there's so much of this going on that, that we need to talk about this stuff, and that the fact that we need to exist is sad, but we are here, and we do all need to work together to make this happen, because you can't, I know from my experience, you cannot do it alone. You have to work with other people, and that's how you get better.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Hello. Well, welcome to my next interview of MythBusters. I am so excited, you guys, to bring you a good friend of mine, but more than that, a leading subject matter expert in this field. Please welcome Elizabeth Scaife.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for the extra claps and snaps.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here. I guess I should say a little bit about myself, just so everyone knows, who I am.
Tell the viewers who you are, what you bring, what you've been doing. I'm so excited for them to get so much truth from you. But I want them to know all the things that you have done for so long and how you kind of gathered this wealth of knowledge.
Okay, great. I think I can cover that. So I've actually been in the nonprofit sector for 20 years. Since I graduated college, I have worked in the nonprofit sector, and always with vulnerable and marginalized populations, from international students on campus to Hispanic immigrants in our local community to international projects set up. And then ultimately, I spent a year traveling the world, which in 2007, which introduced me to the issue of human trafficking firsthand and commercial sexual exploitation of women and children. And that ignited something in me that I didn't even know existed, And so I found myself hands and feet on the ground, working with women coming out of the sex industry. And it changed me. It changed me dramatically, actually. Mm-hmm. And so when I returned from that trip after several months, I started looking directly for a career in this field, and I took a job in DC. And I've been here for over 11 years now, working specifically and very diligently on issues surrounding anti-trafficking policy, awareness, training, capacity building, strategic planning, program development, you name it. I've had my hands in it for the last 11 years. And I've worked for 2 international nonprofits to do that. And then about a year ago, I launched my own contracting and consulting business, which I'm struggling through the pandemic on right now. But I enjoy the freedom to be able to work with so many different organizations, and especially survivor-run organizations, to help with projects as they come.
So let's, this is all such fascinating stuff, and I'm so excited for people to get the entire 1-hour interview with you. I'm going to pull out a little great nuggets for our IGTV, but I really want people to come listen to this entire hour. I hope they do. I want to ask you, with so many, there's just information coming in from everywhere right now. And so I know that most of the people that might be tuning in, you may have reshared some of these things, and I don't want anybody to feel embarrassed or shamed. Elizabeth herself admitted, when I first started, I shared some of those things too, or I had these ideas too. You have, right now in this time, we have more information coming at us than ever before. And it's really hard to sort through, what's truth, what's not truth. I've seen people share things that I know and trust and respect that are completely inaccurate. And I'm like, oh shoot, people are believing what they're saying because they're credible in other circles. So then they think they must be credible in this content as well. Yeah. And so I want to hear from you a little bit about some of those misconceptions around the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. You're right in the same city that they're in. You worked hand in hand. You have colleagues that you've worked with for years there. Share with us a little bit about this report that comes out with 800,000 missing children and what people need to be thoughtful of when they get any kind of report, any kind of data, any kind of statistic. How do you sort through the mess?
I would love to see this report on 800,000 kids. I'm open-minded, but I'm entirely skeptical. First of all, what I know for a fact is that kids, anyone under 18 is reported missing in 2 places. First of all, it's the National Crime Information Center. That's law enforcement specific information. And then also during the Obama administration, it became required that they report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, right? So there are 2 places where these reports are entered. And so the data is largely parallel for both of those on an annual basis. The NCIC reports are a little different because it's not worth getting into, but it's not that their numbers aren't accurate. They just handle their system differently, so the numbers appear differently. So NCMEC they probably have more oversight in how they do their numbers, and they're able to pull more accurate data, right? And so as far as we know, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there are somewhere between 25 and 29,000 kids that go missing every year. Now, let me be clear. The majority of them, like 94% of them, are recovered within 1 to 6 weeks from when they go missing, right? And the majority of the kids who go missing are runaways, most of whom are chronic runaways, most of whom are female chronic runaways. And so with 94% of them recovered within those first few weeks, and then the bulk of them in general recovered within another amount of time. And so it's not that we have 800,000 missing kids at any given time. Somebody's calculating something wrong, because it's just not realistic. And also, they don't stay on the streets. But the endangered runaway issue, if you want to compare it or delineate it specifically to child sex trafficking, NCMEC would say, and they use a very rigorous and I think very credible and trusted approach, that 1 out of 6 of the runaways that they consider endangered they believe to be victims of trafficking. An endangered runaway includes a child who has run from custody that has a few very vulnerable factors that are attached to them. Could be a mental illness, could be that the child is pregnant, could be that they're carrying a weapon, that they've been gang involved, could be that they've been identified or believed to be a high risk for child sex trafficking. There are like 11 endangering factors related to these kids. And
so they screen for those, and if they're marked as high endangered out of the screening protocol, then out of that group that's all been marked endangered, 1 out of 6 is their estimate that will be trafficked at some point.
Out of their 29,000-ish victims, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say victims, the kids who go missing, 91% of them are classified as endangered. So the bulk of them are endangered for quite a few different reasons. However, almost all of them are recovered within 6 weeks, guys. And so and they're not counting the number of times a child was reported. The NCIC, the other system, they count every report that goes in. And so
regardless if it's the same kid.
Yeah, if they make an update to the file, a number gets added. They're counting accesses to the files, basically.
Gotcha.
Instances that the file was updated. And so that's why those numbers, they're not erroneous, they're just different, right? But NCMEC has individual cases. And so again, it's not enough to ever just look at a number by the sensationalism of it. Do some background research, for crying out loud, before you pass it along to anyone.
Yeah, and tell us why it matters. I mean, obviously we talked about getting the right, but I feel like I hear people say like, well, at least he's bringing awareness. And in my mind, I'm like, at first I was like, that's absolutely ridiculous. We don't say that, cancer is contagious in hopes that everyone goes and gets checked. Like, we don't just make up lies about things in hopes that people look into it. It's really distracting us from knowing how to protect our children based on the age group that they're in, which I really want to specify. But then I'll be honest, and I was like, well, I wouldn't be doing this MythBuster campaign if y'all weren't doing it. And now we get to get this information out. So I have to admit that sometimes I'm torn. I definitely would rather not have to be doing this and us already know what to look for, because this is a lot of work. It's taking a lot of time. It's not cheap to edit videos and get things out. I have to reschedule weeks of calendar. Like, I would rather actually just be getting back to work. But we stopped to do this because we are seeing an increase in misperceptions of exploitation at astonishing numbers online. And it's quite shocking to feel like the pendulum has swung in the last, 11, 12 years I've been in this field myself. It's like, what is happening right now? I just don't understand.
I agree with you. I think it's the worst distraction, and that probably traffickers are celebrating, because when the entire community is focused on A, B, or C extreme possibilities, like incredibly low risk circumstances that are actually going to happen to your child because you believe it to be this A, B, and C thing that almost never happens, right? Then you are overlooking the 99% of possibilities that could actually happen within your own home, within your own child, with the vulnerabilities that you don't even recognize that every child has. So that's what happens. Our attention is drawn over here by the shiny object that looks crazy and wild and disbelieving and shocking, while all the mundane stuff that's happening over here is the world that they operate in.
So true. So true. Elizabeth, thank you so much for spending some time with us. As you well know, we could talk for hours. We have talked for hours. I think you just carry so much wisdom. You have just a wealth of insight in you. Let people know how they can get a hold of you. We have a lot of people that are going to be listening. We might have other groups that are wanting to bring you on. I know you're doing your new independent consulting. let people know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I think the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. And so I know Rebecca's going to include my name and information in the podcast, or you can find me by name, but my email address is escaifeconsulting@gmail.com. And that's the best way to find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all your work, for all your passion. And I cannot wait to see how this pendulum swings back, and all of the policy and great work that you can get to continue to do in all of the different lanes to combat trafficking. Thank you. You guys, that's a wrap. I want to thank our sponsor, #RealityCheckIt, for bringing all of this information to you today. Please make sure you check out our YouTube page, where all of these guests have their entire full-length interview. And if you like what you're hearing and you like what you're seeing, please share it on social media, tag a friend. We want to get this information out to everybody that's interested in this topic. And stay tuned for an upcoming podcast where we explore all of this into anywhere where you watch your favorite shows. Thanks again.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to start over with nothing?
Human trafficking. It's the largest social justice issue of our time.
What happens to women and children after they escape, after they complete a program?
How do you start life over again with a renewed sense of purpose?
Elevate Academy was birthed from that.
Elevate is an online school that offers courses, mentors, small groups, in-person chapters, homework activities, and job opportunities.
So that survivors of human trafficking can start to actually dream again and then create steps to get there.
By partnering with us financially every month for 1 year, you not only change the course of a survivor's life, but also her children and her children's children.
But it doesn't stop there.